Welcome to the A4S Summit and this webinar, in which we are hosting in the lead up to the 2021 International Case Competition. My name is Helen Slinger, and I'm Executive Director at the Prince's Accounting for Sustainability Project, A4S. A4S was set up by His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales back in 2004, with the purpose of transforming finance to deliver a sustainable future. Our vision is for sustainable business to be business as usual, and the International Case Competition is one way that we are working to achieve this. Today, I'm joined by one of the judges for the 2021 competition, Brian Lawson. Brian is the Vice Chair of Brookfield Asset Management, one of the sponsors of the International Case Competition, and he is also a founding member of our Canadian CFO Leadership Network. Welcome, Brian.
Glad to be here, Helen.
So we started the A4S International Case Competition 4 years ago to allow students to generate ideas that will both solve sustainability challenges and create the businesses of the future. So this year's competition will be taking place virtually in March 2021, which will mark a year since the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic. The crisis has had immeasurable impact on business and has exposed vulnerabilities in organizations and especially their supply chains. The case topic for this year's competition is supply chain resilience and climate change impact, which will build on the lessons we have learned from the pandemic, as well as the momentum that was building in 2019 and early 2020 in climate and the domino effect of commitments to net zero emissions we have seen more recently. Brian, can you start by telling us what a sustainable and resilient business means to you, and in particular, why supply chains are so fundamental to this?
Certainly, Helen. So to me, a sustainable business is one that's well positioned to thrive over the long period. It has a relevant purpose. It's a purpose that will continue to be relevant, and it relies on and maintains sustainable capitals, whether it be human, financial, physical. Resiliency is the ability to withstand shocks. It can be market cycles, technological change, climate change, pandemics. And supply chains, as we've seen, are indeed fundamental. We've all woken up to the fact that well, we knew it before, but this really hammered it home. It's a very integrated, interdependent world. And our own sustainability and resilience of any organization is only as good as the supply chain that we rely on.
So how has COVID-19 impacted those supply chains? You know, at Brookfield, have you seen existing mechanisms or approaches that have enabled that greater resilience to those impacts?
Certainly. Well, I think more broadly, the pandemic certainly brought supply chain from the back page to the front page, and PPE face masks were the most obvious one, and we saw similar things in some aspects of our business, but more broadly, you saw things about cross-border transport challenges, production challenges, quality control, even protectionism, nationalism, and you could see it impacting what seemed to be fully integrated vertical supply chains, where if you had a production facility shut down in the middle, it would decrease supply, increase costs post the production channel, production facility, and then before that would create a glut and a drop in prices. So you could see that in certain areas of agriculture where the farmers were being harmed significantly by the prices, whereas the end consumers were facing higher pricing. For us, I think the big thing is the approach that people take towards their supply chain management, and those relationships. If it's focused on the quality, redundancy, transparency, partnership, these are all the things that came up. And you could see that supplier relationships that were primarily transactional and focused solely on driving down costs, those proved to be the most vulnerable. The ones that were built more on a longer-term partnership approach proved to be much more resilient and adaptable to these rapid changes in circumstances. And we certainly saw that within our own business.
So that partnership and collaboration idea really makes a difference.
Yes, because when you're scrambling to essentially reinvent how you're doing certain things or shift, if you have that transparency and that trust and that longer term commitment, it makes it much easier for folks to work together and come up with the type of creative solutions that are necessary, and particularly when you're doing this in real time, very fast. It's critical.
So given that we know that companies can have such a significant impact over their supply chain, sort of building on that partnership collaboration idea, what do you see as the most important thing in ensuring resilient supply chains as we look towards a sustainable recovery from COVID?
Yeah, so I think one of the key ways is just how you think about your supply chain. And if you view it as being an integrated part of your own business and take a risk management approach to it, to me, that really drives a lot of the necessary things you need to do. I think we're all now much more alive to the issue of what happens when you, I'll say, use a supply chain to push down costs and to offload risk. We've seen it come back at people and organizations, unless those counterparties are actually better at managing costs and driving down costs and better at risk management, in which case that can actually reduce the risk of your supply chain. But that again comes to taking an integrated approach to how you think about it. And to your point about the influence, and particularly in the context of climate change and moving past the pandemic, it does give you an organization the opportunity to have a significantly larger impact with what you're trying to achieve with your own business by encouraging and incenting your partners in your supply chain to work with you to similar standards and similar objectives. And that's something, you mentioned the A4S, the CFO to Leadership Network in Canada. That's something we have a specific initiative on incentivizing change in supply chains. That's a live project for us right now with a number of our members.
Great. And I guess in either in that project or beyond within your work at Brookfield, have you seen any good examples of where people are using that opportunity to influence their supply chains in that recovery from COVID? Yes,
I think so, and I think we'll see more of this. But I'd say a lot of it through the pandemic has been reactive, and just okay, how do we get through this? How do we do things, and how do we work together? And it's certainly created a lot of examples in our business, but elsewhere. Some of it's just simply responding to changes in financial circumstances, and how do you work with your partners through that? A lot of it has been, I'll call it, asynchronous integration, just to accommodate the physical restrictions. And we've seen things obviously widespread. What we're doing today, just doing this by video, has had a remarkable impact on a lot of things. That supply chain is obviously much broader than that. Just simple logistics things, curbside pickup at retail malls, and then production innovation. We're example of this isn't in our business, but just a simple example: someone who is producing sweatbands for their head, converting that into the bands for face shields. So these sorts of rapid things that have worked on partnerships within the supply chain, and a lot of these things are going to continue beyond. They're not, there's a lot that we've learned about improving ways to do things that have been responsive to the pandemic, but will have application going forward, and a lot of it to do with climate change as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, absolutely. So I think a lot of that sort of reactive that we've seen so far, we can obviously learn from that. But as we look forward and as we think about future challenges such as climate change, we want to be using some of these lessons to be able to look ahead and to build that sustainable recovery. So within that, what do you see as the role of innovation in creating those supply chains with inbuilt resilience to climate change and any other future shocks, any other future issues such as COVID, dare I say it?
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think innovation is absolutely critical. So much of our economy has been built and established in an era that frankly predates any concern about the impact of fossil fuels, for example. Mm-hmm. It was a smaller economy, it was a smaller population. Just a lot of stuff has changed. And for us to be able to successfully shift, it's going to require a lot more than just simply doing less of stuff or doing things differently within the existing boundaries. It's going to require innovation, and we've seen tremendous innovation over the last number of years. Obviously, I mean, you just think about electrification and what we've seen in our own business in terms of the shift in the cost profile of solar and wind, and the ability to increase the electrification of the economy can lead to a significant decrease in the amount of carbon. So that's just one example that exists within our business, but there's so many things from the small to the large that each can on their own in time have a significant influence. So I think that large scale innovation is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and obviously as part of the competition, we're asking students to sort of, be innovative and to really focus on this supply chain resilience and climate change impact, and to come up with our own ideas about how we can redress this and build a sustainable recovery. So I guess, what do you see their role within this, and what are you looking for in those student entries as a judge?
Great, sure. So in terms of students and their role, we often talk about students of today being the leaders of the future, and that's it's absolutely true. But I think that the point is the future begins now, and as students move into their careers, they'll have tremendous impact, and starting way earlier than I think a lot might realize, and that's with their attitudes, with the ideas, with the energy. That impact cannot be underestimated. It's, I know it's one of the most exciting things to watch in our organization, and it's been absolutely critical to our success. So in terms of what, just moving to the case competition and what we've tended to be looking for as judges, I'd say a lot of it comes down to the impact of the ideas, and we'd look at the impact in, let's say, through three lenses or three paradigms. One is the scale, the ability to move the needle. How much impact is it going to have? The feasibility, how comfortable, what's the assurance it can be executed with existing technology or existing resources, and innovation. Is this going to really be making a difference and truly additive? Is this really something new? Those are, to me, three really important attributes of the impact that an idea can have.
So just on that impact, then, you'll know from your time as CFO that impact will be quite a difficult thing to measure and quite a difficult
Yes.
thing to get to grips with, to be able to communicate. So have you got any tips for how teams can ensure they incorporate that measurement aspect into their entries in their solutions?
Yeah, it's one of the big challenges. I think we all realize in this. It's a new, and it's like you say, you can't manage it if you can't measure it, and so it is something I think that students with the entries should really strive to demonstrate is how can you measure that impact? How will users know that what of these ideas that what they're doing is giving them the results that they're looking for? It's got to be pragmatic, reliable, and easy to use.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess just as my final question, if you could give students one piece of advice for applying to the International Case Competition, what would it be?
Be creative and really open-minded, and I think a lot of times some of the really creative solutions are hiding in plain sight. It's simply taking something that already exists, but just doing it in a different way, doing it in a way that makes it more impactful, and in a way that creates scale. And again, that comes down to the impact of it. And it can sometimes be a modest tweak to an existing thing, but I'd say just be creative and very open-minded about it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for talking to us today, Brian. I'm looking forward, as I'm sure you are, to seeing what the students come up with, what innovative ideas they have, and how they suggest that we solve some of the challenges that we're facing. So if anyone listening would like to find out more information and apply, please visit our website, which is a4sicc.com. We look forward to seeing you at the competition. Brian, many thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the summit, and I will see you at the competition in March.
Super. Thanks very much, Helen. Take care.